Hey folks, this is Kalani. Patch 8.3 is just around the corner at this point. It literally goes live next reset, but that doesn't stop Blizzard from cramming in a few extra changes here and there at the very last minute. Corrupted gear and effects have been buffed significantly almost across the board. There's some changes to the patch 8.3 introduction questline that makes it more alt friendly, and the Mythic Plus season is coming to an end. Let's break it all down. The introduction quest was something that quite a few players were a bit worried about, especially the chaps out there who play multiple characters. I know a few guildies were trying to figure out the best way to set up their alts for patch day, because up until now it looked like every single character would have to go through the hours-long introduction questline all on their own. I think this might be one of the longest and most enjoyable introduction sequences we've had in quite some time. It does a fantastic job in setting the stage, explaining what's happening and why it's such a big deal, and it also walks you through all of the different bits and pieces of the patch. Why we're down in Uldum and the Vale of Eternal Blossoms instead of some other newer zones, what does N'Zoth and his Black Empire want with these zones specifically, and what are these strange visions that seem to depict our world in fragments. The questline will explain everything, and I think playing on the PTR and playing patch 8.3 as a whole was way more enjoyable after the introduction experience. It does a fantastic job. The only problem that might creep in is that such a lengthy intro quest might start to get frustrating if you have to do it on your 5th, 10th, maybe 15th character. Don't look at me, I'm only planning on playing 2 for this patch, but I do know some people who take the title of Altaholic to the next level. Most players on the PTR are quoting the intro stuff to take between 2 and 3 hours, so that's going to add up pretty quickly as you add more characters to get through it. But in a recent Wowhead interview with some Blizzard developers, we found out that there is in fact a plan to have sections of the questline be skippable if you've gone through it before. It's not going to be the entire questline that you can skip, which kind of makes sense because it unlocks various features, provides you with some valuable currencies, and you get your legendary cloak along the way as well. Being able to skip the entire thing and just have all of that dumped in your inventory might be a bit too much, but there are a few scenarios which make up a bulk of your time spent throughout the intro questline. It sounds like most of those scenarios will be skippable your second time around, and obviously every time after that. So you'll pick up the quest, turn it in wherever, be asked to work your way through a scenario, and boom, skip right to the end. That should shave off at least 30 minutes from what I've played, maybe even up to an hour of time spent on every character you want to play in patch 8.3. The scenarios can end up taking a very long time to complete, especially if you're either not very geared or you're not even running a DPS specialization. It's worth mentioning that you can't do very much, if anything at all, in patch 8.3 without finishing the intro first. It gives you the legendary cloak, which is required for delving into any visions, and I don't think you can even see the world quests or assaults in the new zones for the patch without doing the intro. I doubt you can even talk to the factions or reputations involved, so no dailies either. If you want to play a character in this patch, you will have to work your way through the quest lines that open it all up for you. At least that isn't going to take as long as we initially thought it would on alternate characters, so go crazy with your alts. It's the last patch of the expansion. If there was ever a time to play more characters, it's right now. And then we come to corrupted gear and corrupted effects. Oh boy, I feel like we're here almost every week. Something else about corrupted gear has changed. I was worried that this system would end up being too confusing or convoluted, but it is making progress slowly but surely. The largest issue I had with this system, for the most part, was the positive effects. They just didn't do enough. If you're going to kill me sometimes for running around with high levels of corruption, it absolutely has to be worth it. To that end, boring corrupted effects have been removed, more effects were added into the mix that actually do something, and they've been given buff after buff after buff up until this point, but we're still not done. How about another round of buffs just to seal the deal? I doubt anyone will be thinking, yeah, I'll just cleanse all of this off, it's not going to be worth the effort, after this system actually hits live servers. Some of these damage numbers are going to be insane. Let's go through these buffs quickly, shall we? Avoidant. Your avoidance is increased by an amount equal to 8%, 12% and 16% of your haste. That's for tiers 1, 2 and 3. Nice buffs there. Maybe something the tanks actually want to consider running now with those buffs. Gushing Wound. This one will have its damage modifier increased from 70% to 91%. Not too sure what the modifier is, but it's probably attack or spell power. Either way, it's gone up 21%, so more damage from the bleeds. Infinite Stars. This one was looking to be quite powerful already, but these buffs just knock it off the charts. It scales off your attack or spell power, so anyone can use it, and the scaling for each tier has been increased quite dramatically. For tier 1, it's 60% up to 111%, almost double. For tier 2, it goes from 80% all the way up to 276%. That's just kinda bonkers, but tier 3 goes even further, from 100% up to 415%. These stars are going to be hitting like trucks, and the effect even has a damage increase baked into it. I can't wait to see how much damage you can do if you can stack this corrupted effect. The Leech one even got a buff. We're up to 3%, 5% and 8% for tiers 1, 2 and 3. They won't even leave the little corrupted effects behind in these buffs apparently. Twilight Devastation's damage has been tripled across the board. Tier 1 now deals 6% of your max health, up from 2%. Tier 2 is now 12%, up from 4%. And Tier 3 rounds it off with 18% of your health, up from 6%. This effect will also scale with your item level, as better gear means more stamina, which means more health, which directly translates into more damage with this effect. That's going to deal some nasty damage by the time we're all geared up. Twisted Appendage has been tuned a little differently. Tier 1 actually has seen a nerf, taking the scaling from 25% down to 21% of your attack or spell power. I guess the Tier 1 was doing a bit too well, but Tier 2 has gone from 45% to 75%, so obviously they want the higher tiers to be significantly more powerful than the lower tiers, and then Tier 3 goes off the wall again by increasing the scaling from 65% to 142%. I guess they really want to make it worth the extra corruption. And then the Void Ritual has also seen some buffs. Tier 1 remains the same, 7 secondary stats every second for 20 seconds. That's a mouthful. Tier 2 kicks that up a notch, it's now 17 stats every second, up from 10, and Tier 3 is set at 32 stat per second, up from 13. These buffs cover a huge number of the available corrupted effects that you can find on gear in patch 8.3. I know the Echoing Void was shaping up to be a lot more powerful when compared to some of the other effects, so these buffs were probably aimed at bringing everything into line. I love that they decided to buff the lower performing effects instead of just nerfing Echoing Void. Nerfing the Echoing Void could have yielded the same result, but in a less satisfying way for the system as a whole. With all of these buffs in place, I don't think anyone will want to ignore the corruption feature in patch 8.3. It's going to provide some insane throughput increase almost no matter what effects you end up getting by the looks of things. Some are obviously going to be better than others, but it's not like if you get one, you're not going to get a DPS increase, whereas if you get the best one, it's going to be heads and tails above the others. Obviously, there's going to be the better ones, but it looks like almost no matter what you get, it should be a huge benefit, and even maybe worth taking some of the larger amounts of corruption. I am super excited to see what everyone gets in their first Mythic Plus cache. Remember, that's a guaranteed corrupted piece if nothing changes from the PTR. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is the upcoming exchange of Titan Residuum. Hopefully you've heard by now, but just in case you haven't, Titan Residuum isn't being carried forward into Season 4 of Battle for Azeroth. It's been completely wiped out, scrubbed from the board. Next season will be a fresh slate for Residuum, so if you've been stockpiling this entire time thinking you'll get some really early 475 pieces, or whatever, of Azerite gear, I'm sorry to have to disappoint you. You won't get nothing for all your effort though. Titan Residuum will be exchanged for silver when patch 8.3 goes live. It's been 1 silver per Residuum or 10 silver per Residuum on the PTR, and it's gone back and forth, but either way you won't really get anything crazy for Residuum stockpiles. It's going to be a couple thousand gold at the most. It's really nothing to write home about. It's certainly not worth thinking too hard about either, or farming Residuum to try and make some quick gold. But something very important about this exchange is that it's going to be happening next week, this coming reset. It's not going to wait for Season 4, which I believe is when the vendor will have updated goodies for us to pick and choose from. There's going to be a week here where we don't have any residuum to play around with because it's getting exchanged and nothing to really buy anyway. But if you're wanting to spend your residuum on additional pieces of Azerite gear instead of just letting them turn into gold, you'll have to do that before the next reset day and before patch 8.3 goes live. Just wanted to give you a heads up. And that's it for this video. Have you managed to form an opinion on the corrupted gear system with all of the previews we've had on the public test realm, or is this something you really have to get your hands on to be able to test, play around with, and then ultimately decide how you feel about it? I think it's going to be a good system when all is said and done. I always said the largest issue they were going to have was the corrupted effects being too piddly. They had to be huge to make this worthwhile, and now we get yet another round of buffs. I think it will work out nicely, but what about you? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join this lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.